right, so I will call the regular meeting of the Lewiston Planning and Zoning Commission for July 8th, 2026 to order. So number 2 is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission with comments and or questions about Planning and Zoning Commission related matters. They are not a public hearing action item on the agenda. We don't have a public hearing, but don't see anybody in the audience. Do we have anything snail mail called in? Delivered by Al from Hogwarts. I don't know. Thought I threw in the Al. Thought I'd explain the Al reference, but so moving on to number 3 is our active agenda.
Okay, we like it.
I do.
I don't remember the name of the owls. I'm sorry.
Do better.
My wife might. Is approval of the June 24, 2026 meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look those over? I thought they were splendid as always.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I will take a motion.
I will so move.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. So item B on our active agenda is from the Gem State Housing Alliance. They are going to do a presentation regarding housing policy, addressing NIMBYism, and the importance of considering long-term implications in decision-making. All right. And we have Holly on the line, Zoom.
And you're pointing this way.
I know, right? Sorry, but I don't know where the camera is, to be honest. So take it away, Holly.
Great, thank you. Dawn, I should be able to share, yes?
Correct.
Yes. All right. So thank you all so much for having me today. You sound like a really fun planning and zoning commission. So happy to be here this evening. But we're gonna talk about housing. We're gonna talk about housing costs and supply and different ways to lower the cost. So as the introduction said, I'm Holly Condi. I am the advocacy director for Gem State Housing Alliance. Just an agenda for everyone so we know what the roadmap is, give you a little bit about Gem State. Then we're going to talk about Lewiston specifically, and then also kind of zoom out and talk about Idaho needs specifically, then get into why homes are so expensive, why are these costs so high, and then talk about how we bring those costs down. And then we're going to talk specifically about public engagement, go through challenges and talk through some solutions, and then how to talk about housing, and then happy to open it up for a discussion. So if you've got questions, comments, anything like that, I would love to have a dialogue at the end. So that sounds good to everyone. We will go forward. So about Gem State. Gem State Housing Alliance is Idaho's first and only housing advocacy group. These little groups exist all over the country, but we are the first, and we are brand new. Gem State's only about 6 months old, and so we've hit the ground running, working on a couple of different things. But as you all know, there's lots of conversations about housing, right? These things come up constantly, and there's lots of different groups that are working on the problem. They're talking about it. They're trying to figure out why it's so expensive, and we figured it out that everybody's talking about it. Everyone is sort of admiring the problem of high housing costs, but there was no one taking action. And so we formed Gem State so that we could move everybody in the right direction towards actually solving the problem and lowering the cost of housing. How we do this is we are advocates for pro-housing policies. And so we engage decision makers like yourselves and then the general public as well. Educate. I am trained as a teacher. I've taught in grade school classrooms up to graduate school classrooms. And so that's kind of my jam, is teaching folks about housing and how policies impact the cost of housing. And then we organize. As I mentioned, there's lots of different groups that are talking about housing because it impacts all of us. At Gem State, we're trying to get everybody kind of rowing their boat in the same direction so that we can actually make an impact. Lewiston, specifically, y'all have about 35,000 people. The median home value is about $397, and median gross rent is about $1,100. And I think most of you are probably familiar with that and probably have better updated numbers and personal experience. So let's talk more broadly about Idaho. So back in January, we did a survey of Idahoans across the state, all different regions across the state. And from that survey found that across political ideologies, across income levels, housing is a concern. It is the number one concern, which is new, right? Most folks say 8 in 10 Idahoans say that there's just not enough homes. There are not enough homes to rent or to buy. And 72% say that they want action. They want their local governments and their state government to address this issue of housing affordability. Why is housing so expensive? So I like to, these are the top line 3 reasons why housing is so expensive. And I like to think of them as things that we can control and things that we cannot control, right? The high cost of housing, obviously, materials plays into this. We've all been to the grocery store lately and we know how expensive everything is. That's a part of it, right? The rising cost of housing is a part of it. High cost is one of those things that we can't directly control through policy, right? It's the global economy. We're not going to be able to write a policy that says you've got to have, lumber cost this or, plumbing supplies cost this. The second bucket is regulation and red tape. So industry experts, so these are home builders, developers of all sizes, tell us that about 25% of their cost comes directly from permitting, right? And then delays in permitting also. And that is a 40% jump over the last 6 years, right? Since 2020, the cost of permitting has risen substantially, right? And then the last one is just basic economics, right? Supply and demand. And in Idaho, as you all know, we've had this huge influx of people, and our supply has not been able to keep up. And that's why we're feeling the housing costs kind of more acutely than other states that haven't grown quite so fast. So building on, I want to build specifically on permitting costs, right? Because this is something that is controllable, right? This is a factor that we can actually work on to lower the cost of housing. So specifically, I want to talk about discretionary review and how that adds to the final process or the final price tag that a homeowner is going to pay when they sign their paperwork. As we know, time is money. And so extra hearings, if you are requiring something like a CUP, right, that's going to require extra hearing time, that's going to cost more because it takes longer, right? Instead of just being able to approve that project because it meets all of your objective standards, that uncertainty and that hearing time adds cost. There's also problems when you require discretionary review with land valuation. So if I'm a home builder and I own a lot and I want to develop it, I want to put a duplex on there, right? Because it's big enough, meets all the setback standards, all of that good stuff. If I'm a home builder, I know that I can build a single family home, no problem, right? If I want to build a duplex and house 2 families instead, and I know that I have to go through discretionary review, it means that that project now is uncertain, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to build my project because I could get, tens of thousands of dollars into it, drawing plans, going through permitting, going back and forth. And then if it's killed at a discretionary review, then I'm just out that money. And instead I have to just go back, build my giant mansion and call it a day, right? So we're raising the cost because we're adding uncertainty into the equation. And there's some issues with confidentiality, but this is accounted for in state law. So in Idaho, we have our Local Land Use and Planning Act that was passed in 1975. It allows for by right permitting. So cities, the city of Lewiston could set standards for the zoning code, including design standards, scale, setbacks, all of those things, and then approve projects just administratively, right? So if somebody comes in and they say, hey, I want to build this duplex, it's allowed, it meets every single objective. Your staff can check those boxes. LUPA says that that is absolutely fine. You're allowed to approve those projects. I want to talk about more supply again, right? More homes is going to lower the cost. And how this works generally is new supply, even that expensive new supply, increases competition between landlords. So if we're talking about the rental market, if you've got a market rate development, and we know that that means more competition between landlords, right? That's going to at least stabilize rents and not raise rents. So there's this common misconception that if you have market rate apartments that go in, that everything is going to be ridiculously expensive. Well, what actually happens is you have more supply, and then the load is spread out, and so the costs go at least stabilize, and it's not going to raise everything up. We also know that renters are far less likely to be displaced when new construction goes up. And then this one is really interesting because we have the numbers from Texas. Texas has done great things when it comes to housing reform. They saw rent reduction. They saw their costs lower when they started removing red tape and building more housing supply. All of this talk, I want to specifically zero in on housing types, right? I hear this all the time. I've talked with people all over the state about housing, and they're like, yeah, but I see all of this construction, right? There's apartments going up here, there's a subdivision going in there, and that's true. But again, we've had so much population growth, and we don't have the supply that keeps up with it. Right now, what most communities do, and this is across the country, is they allow two different home types, right? They allow the mid-rise apartments in multifamily zones. So those are like the 20 units to 200 unit apartment complexes, right? Like the big ones where you can house a lot of families. Or they allow detached single family homes, which happen to be the most expensive product, right? Because they're the biggest, they take up the most land, and they just happen to be the most expensive. What we're talking about when I say increase supply, it's also increase different products on the market, right? Those middle options that we haven't seen a lot of since local planning and zoning became a thing. So if we go back, I want to take us back in history just a little bit. Zoning code really became a thing in the United States in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Like I mentioned, LUPA was passed in Idaho in 1975. If we think back to homes that were built, if you've ever been in a home that was built in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, they're smaller, right? They have a smaller footprint, they take up less space, and with that smaller footprint is a smaller price tag. And a lot of those homes are no longer legal to build, or they require special permits where the most expensive product, the single family detached house, is by right. You can just build those wherever. But the houses that are smaller, the homes that are smaller, require more hoops to be able to jump through to be able to build those. And then one of the results is that the cost has gone up. And I think I'm wondering too, and maybe this can be like a quick show of hands, how many of you have heard of missing middle housing? Oh, yay, good. Everyone. So you never know what you're gonna get. Like sometimes I ask people and they're like, no, this lady's crazy. Um, so missing middle housing we talked about. Let's see. Now on to what I'm sure is everyone's favorite. We're gonna talk about public hearings. Uh, oh no, sorry. We're gonna talk about multifamily and commercial first. Do 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 do. We know that folks really like to live near where they shop, where they work. And this is just a couple of stats for you about how it's actually better for property values. And then on the last bullet, infrastructure costs a lot more when you sprawl, right? And we know this, that if you're developing in an outlying area, it's going to cost a lot more for the city, but it also adds to the final price tag for that home buyer. That sprawl costs more money because you've got more road, more infrastructure, more sewer, more, all of these things that have to go out into undeveloped land. It's going to be a lot more expensive than developing within city limits on existing infrastructure. Now we'll talk about public hearings. I'm sure, as you are all aware, you've probably sat on this commission for a little while and you've at least had a few angry people show up. And I want to let you know that this is consistent with not only planning and zoning commissions, but legislative committees and city council hearings and county commissioner hearings, right? Folks who are angry are the ones who show up. But we have to remember that that is not necessarily representative of the entire public, right? Because just because the angriest people in the room are the loudest does not mean that it is representative of the public. So public hearings, especially in the space that you all are volunteering in, tend to be super hyper local, right? And so it's people from one street on one block, or it's just a tiny little section of the neighborhood who showed up. It's not the entire city. It's not even the entire, the entire block sometimes. Another challenge with public hearings is timing, right? Any of you who are parents know that sometimes a Wednesday night at 6:30 or 5:30 in the evening can be a busy time, right? And so just the timing, it makes it very difficult for folks to participate fully in the project, especially if you're not trying to fight something, right? If you're supportive of something, it's a lot harder to make time to show up in person. And then again, that's right towards in person. So participating with written or online comments is usually more accessible to people, especially if you've got folks who just cannot make it to City Hall or wherever it is that the public hearing is being held. Requiring folks to come to you usually weeds out a lot of pro-housing people. So there are pro-housing people in your community. There's pro-housing folks in Lewiston. It's just harder for them to come to you. So those are some of the challenges. There are ways to address these challenges, right? So, and this is specifically, I believe, Lewiston, y'all are going through a whole rewrite, if I'm correct. And so what you want to do is cast a really wide net, right? Opponents show up, supporters need to be invited. Engage the public and try and get comments from as many folks as possible using different ways, right? And this is more tips for staff too. So send out those surveys, send it in your city's newsletter, send it on your city's social media. Try and reach folks where they're at, tabling at community events, basketball games and fairs and community markets. All of those places are really good places to get input from folks who wouldn't otherwise share their opinion about how your city grows. And how your city grows is that's what you want input on, right? Because this is not a question of if you grow or not, it's how you grow. We can't stop growth. That's just not how our economy is set up. And we need to think about how we're growing. And to do that effectively, you've got to reach as many people as possible. Celebrate public engagement, right? So if you get people to show up and give their opinion, even if it's 35 survey results, you had 35 residents who filled out your survey, awesome. That's a win. That's worth celebrating. It's like when you vote and you get your I voted sticker, you're proud to hear that. Same thing. Celebrate it when folks come and they show up. And that goes for people who are opposing any kind of development and growth also, right? It's important that folks make their voice heard. We just want to reach as many people as possible. And then the fourth point down here, I think is particularly relevant to you all as planning and zoning commissioners. Emphasize to the public that if a development meets code, it should be approved, right? And that is, you have that authority under state law. You have that authority under LUPA to approve something if it meets code, right? You don't necessarily have to deny a permit or deny an approval just because the neighbors show up and they're angry about it, right? If it meets code, it should be approved. These are probably some of the things that you have heard at public hearings that folks have said, this is going to change the character of the neighborhood. When we think back and we think about neighborhoods with character, it's not necessarily the housing type, right? It's setbacks, it's design standards, it's scale, right? You're not going to have a huge high-rise apartment right next to some duplexes or a single family home. It's because it looks weird, right? And those are things that you can control. Neighbors should have it. Oh, did I hit a nerve?
Yeah,
Um,
no, that was.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that was
something
the last
that-
meeting.
that's true.
That was the last
That
meeting.
was related to a fun meeting a few weeks ago.
We just had that out.
Okay.
The high rise.
Sorry.
And the single family.
So, you can absolutely should have a mix of housing types, but there are design standards, right? You don't want a giant development right in the middle of a very quiet neighborhood. But there's ways to get input on that doesn't zero down to individual projects. And that's the next bullet point down, right? Neighbors should have a say. Neighbors should absolutely have a say in the high level zoning and comprehensive planning process, right? That's when you can say, hey, we got your input when we redid our comp plan. We got your input when we redid the zoning code. When neighbors come in and want to fight individual projects, it kills housing and it adds to housing costs, right? And so neighbors should have a say at that high level input. Project by project, yeah, you start tromping on people's private property rights, right? Property values were dropped. We have tons of research, oodles of research that says that that's not true, right? More homes and more supply does not necessarily drop property values. And then the last point, we don't have the infrastructure. Infill, and so when we build inside the city, it uses existing roads, you're using existing water, existing sewer. It is far less expensive and far lower cost than sprawl, right? Again, back to miles and miles of roads and sewer and trash, all of that good stuff costs more money. All right. A couple of tips for you all, because language matters, and we can speak about housing and speak about change and growth in a way that's really scary, or we can talk about housing and growth in a way that makes us humanize it, right? So increased density, people think, bah, sardines, I'm scared. Instead, you can talk about homes for people of all shapes and sizes, right? All these different homes. And it really is homes for all types of people, right? Because this is not just, young families that can't afford a new home. It's also, college kids who want to move back to Lewiston and can't afford a place to live. It's seniors who are trying to downsize because they no longer want to take care of a 3,000 square foot house and they can't find a home that's smaller, right? This is affecting all of us, and people moving in, it's not, oh no, this is terrible. It's new neighbors. And single family zoning. I've heard this one a lot too. Oh, if you just want to end single family zoning. Single family homes, single family detached homes are not going away anywhere, right? It is still by far the most available product on the market, right? If you want a single family home and you have the money, you can go out and buy one. Instead, we can talk about, legalizing duplexes, legalizing starter homes, removing the bans on, small apartments, those types of things. Units, instead we like to say homes because that's what they are. We don't live in a unit. I don't live in a unit. I live in a home. Single family versus multifamily. Single detached is what we think of when we think of single family. That's what we're describing, right? Is a detached home. And then workforce housing. I think this one's really important because most of us are working people, right? And this is your teachers, your nurses, your small business owners. It's workforce housing. It's affordable housing in a way that's not, affordable, capital A, subsidized HUD housing. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about housing that is attainable for working people. And then use visuals whenever possible. So show folks what these homes could look like. And this is something that you can ask of your developers, right? If somebody comes in and they have a project, ask them for pictures to see what this might look like, renderings, that kind of thing. And because I like to practice what I preach, here is what some of these smaller home types, these missing middle types, can look like. So the top one on the left is a row of townhomes, right? And they're staggered so that there's a little bit of privacy around there. Everybody's got, you know, a small little front space, and then there's shared common space. In the middle is more of that starter home subdivision type cottage court homes. They're small homes built around a common green space with a much smaller footprint. And then we've got a nice little brick duplex. On the bottom here, this one is interesting because it looks like on the right, the blue and shingle house, that one looks like it has been refurbished to be a duplex, whereas the one on the left looks like it could be, you know, a large single family home or a converted single family home, or it's always been a, you know, was built as a duplex. And then on the bottom right, we have an ADU over a garage. So that's, you know, the college kid place, or somebody's renting it out. But it's just a, you know, a small apartment over the garage. So just quick recap. Idaho, we are the fastest growing state in the country by population. And that's, again, just hammered our supply. We do not have enough homes for folks. We need more homes. We need more diversity of options so that it's not just you can live in an apartment or you can live in a really expensive single family home. We need those other home types to come into the market and be allowed to come to market to give a little bit more option and choice. Engagement is important. So, you know, and this is especially true for staff, try and reach folks where they're at. Engage average community members, ask them about housing, asking, you know, have these conversations too. If you're not staff, you know, commissioners, just ask folks, you know, what are you thinking about this? And you can counter those myths in real time. City leaders can educate. So again, when you're hearing pushback to new developments or new homes, focus on, it's not an if we grow, it's how we grow. We need to be able to plan. We need to be able to let supply catch up with demand. And then lastly, the words matter. So homes of all shapes and sizes, legalize, removing red tape, working family housing, try and use that positive language that opens up minds instead of causing fear, because it is scary. Idaho has grown so fast and it's very unrecognizable to a lot of us, and we're just sort of overwhelmed by it. But now that the shock is starting to wear off, we need to be more positive and proactive and think about how we can increase the housing supply and actually start to solve the problem and take action. With that, I think this is a good time to open it up to questions. I will stop sharing. What questions do we have?
Okay, I'm gonna throw it out there because, you know, I've been told I'm a NIMBY before. No, I mean, honestly, my goal, you have to like people to want to live in a multi-unit anything, right? So when you talk about the varieties of homes that are available out there, affordable is always going to be a target, but so is circumstance. If I have a, you know, excessive amount of toys, you know, for real. I mean, we're Idaho, right? So I'm going to need parking.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for parking, and that might come over and above floor space, or if I don't want to share a bathroom, then I want a place that has 2 bathrooms. And so I think that most homeowners or people who are targeting something for purchase or temporary rental have that same capacity to decide what they need or want. So in established, like deeply established historic neighborhoods that have the walking and the kids can ride the tricycles down the street, the center of the street, you know, and you know who your neighbors are, those areas have their appeal because of that established vibe and availability. And in the older historic ones, maybe the lots are smaller. So if space is more important than architecture, then I'm going to look elsewhere. Or if I want a broader, wider yard so that I don't have people as adjacent to me as I prefer, then I'm going to go out. So I think it really comes down to, if you are looking and not necessarily excessively wealthy, that you can throw some money at something. Yes, financially that guides what you're looking for. But
John,
also,
I lost audio. Sorry. It's back.
Oh, my husband does that all the time, seriously.
Sorry.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. And Commissioner, maybe I can just answer your question. So if
So you're infill, you're talking about infill.
yes, correct. If you want that home type, if you've got, side by sides and dirt bikes and a boat and you want all of those things, then you are absolutely still going to be able to go out and buy that home product, right? What we're missing are those smaller home types, right? And kind of our thoughts on this is putting those smaller home types doesn't ruin the character of a neighborhood by any means, right? And I can say this because I live in an incredibly dense, old neighborhood, right? With old ghost trees, and we are very dense. And I know all of my neighbors, right? And my kiddo walks herself down to the park, right? These things don't, it's changed, so it's scary, and I get that, but it doesn't ruin the character of a neighborhood, right? Having more neighbors does not necessarily ruin it. It doesn't make it worse. And if you don't want neighbors and you don't want to share a bathroom or you need more space, that home product is still available. But right now what we've got in Idaho are thousands of people who cannot afford to live here anymore. And we've got to do something. And so one of the things we've got to do is, what's your point?
My point is, when you have established neighborhoods and you want to do infill, the people that sought those neighborhoods sought that vibe for the very specific offerings that it currently has. And the moment that you do infill, and want infill in an already
Established neighborhood.
established, you are taking the very thing that they sought away from them.
My counter to that would be, if you want something that does not change, then you need to buy a property that is protected by an HOA. Because that is where you're going to find, if you want a certain lifestyle, you want a certain home type, absolutely go buy a home in an HOA. But as soon as you start telling your neighbors what they're not allowed to build or what they can or cannot build, and it meets code, then that's a private property rights issue. Because if I own a property and I want to put an ADU on the back and it's allowed by code, then that's my private property right. And my neighbor, okay.
I think the unique thing about, well, I say it's unique. Every town, every city's own situation is unique. Is that we as a commission have encountered situations where, like we were laughing about earlier, where a developer wants to put something gigantic next to residential neighborhood. We're going through our comprehensive plan right now, the work plan for the first couple of years, which did include some rezones. And we have, as a commission, somewhat been in the middle of discussions around established neighborhoods, not physically changing, but changing from the zoning code and what is and isn't allowed in those neighborhoods. And I will speak frankly and say, no matter what anybody's position is on it, that there is only a certain amount of education you can do before a commission is put in the position of saying, we understand and we respect you, but we don't agree. And I think at some level there are ways to mitigate it, but there isn't a way other than to make a decision, and that is the decision to be made. It doesn't mean either side is bad, and I'm not even speaking about a specific situation that this commission has encountered, but that is inevitably the tension that the situation that Idaho, Lewiston, and other communities are put in.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not necessarily a question, it's more a statement.
Yeah, policy making is intentionally a long, difficult process, and the most successful policies, nobody's ever 100% happy, right? There has to be concessions on things.
So I guess I'll ask you a question, because I think this is relevant to Lewiston and how it's developing now. especially as it plays with state policies as well, is individual communities like Lewiston only have so much ability to sway developers to do things with properties or not do things with properties, regardless of if we rezoned a property so that somebody could put, say, hypothetically, a duplex or a tiny home village, as an example. Like what do, absent state legislation, so just assuming the environment is static, what really can cities do other than maybe a rezone for, say, a particular piece of property that allows the developer to sit, again, I'm going to pick on pick the tiny home village, develop a tiny home village when the money isn't really there. And so
That's
what tools are available for localities to incentivize developers?
That's a very good question, right?
Beyond just a
And
regulatory or zoning code framework.
Right. It is a free market, right? We know that developers would build these products if they were legal, if there wasn't added cost attached because they have to go through a CUP or they have to go through a really long, contentious permitting process in order to build that duplex. I've spoken with developers all over the state. They want to build these things. They want to be allowed to build these things, right? But they can't. And they want to build them because they know that there's a market for them. They know that if they could build a duplex, then they could have 2 sales instead of 1, right? And that $700,000 mansion is going to be a lot harder for them to sell than 2 $350,000 homes, 1 on each side of a duplex, right? They know the market's there. We just need to let the free market do the free market thing and allow legalize more of these home types, remove some of the barriers and remove some of the hoops, and then the market will take over.
So in growth, we get our, I think it's not conditional use, it might be a planned unit development or, those type things. And now we have change codes, so you can have the tiny villages as well. I've seen some very attractive ones and those I actually find very charming when charm's built into them. But when a community wants to grow intentionally, when a community wants to put forethought and consideration into appearance of these planned unit developments, it's more than a good mix. Example of single family, duplex, potentially triplexes. That's important, and I don't think anybody argues that. But when a community leadership wants to also instill not monopoly houses, right? Maybe they say, can we mix up the pattern, or 3 floor plans versus, or 3 storefront or home fronts. Those type of things, if they're giving a vast array, that's not necessarily code, the code setbacks, those are all, we don't talk to anybody that actually meets code, it's what they want to do that falls outside the code. If a developer comes to us and says, well, if I have to put garages with windows in them, that's going to cost a lot more. And then if you let me just build a garage without a window in the door, or I already have a drafted floor plan for my joined wall duplexes, but it has the garage protruding out front, and now your code says they have to fall even to or behind the homes, and that design is thoughtfully worked on by the city leadership to make certain that we have visually appealing neighborhoods as these start to come up. So when you're talking about remove the barriers, we are living results of barriers that have been removed and then created unmitigatable problems in historic areas when thought wasn't put into how a city is supposed to grow and the doors were left open and stuff started to roll. So where's the happy median between remove barriers but keep a vision and an eye on where and how? And when you brought up comprehensive plan and reaching the public. We just finished, the first,
So Lewiston a couple of years ago, Lewiston approved, well, it's called Envision 2044, which, because Lewiston we were, until a couple of years ago, we were operating under a comprehensive plan from 1990. So
Yeah.
Lewiston is operating under our comprehensive plan, which will run for 20 years. That is in a 2-year cycle for a work plan. And we did engage the public, and I mean, there were multiple aspects of that comp plan, and the work plan targets different areas. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And we did engage the public, and we did get meaningful feedback. And of course, a comp plan touches more than just housing and planning and zoning matters. So we did complete that, but I did I wanted to piggyback on what Commissioner Ball said about like where is that happy medium? Because to be honest and blunt, we have had developers come before this commission who have they have taken liberties with the word affordable. And I'm not calling specific developers out by name, but there have been those who have kind of been liberal with that term, liberal with some of the standards and like the costs that certain changes or removing changes would impose. So where is, in your mind, understanding again that every city code is a little bit unique beyond what is required by state statute? Where is that happy medium?
So ideally, what you can do is make your standards, however you form them, make them as objective as possible, right? As soon as you start putting anything that's sort of subjective on there, then you get developers who are being very loosey-goosey, right? Saying like, oh, this fits, even if it doesn't. And you do have to strike that happy medium, right? Because you want something to look nice. You don't want to inundate with, weird homes. But again, and especially if we're talking about a PUD, right? A planned development that is going to have multiple, homes inside of a development, a subdivision, that's kind of a different beast, because then you've got a lot more money sunk into that. That's not necessarily a small infill project that is a duplex, right? A single duplex. That's a big project. Something that requires a PUD is going to be a bigger project. And so you as county commissioner or as planning and zoning commissioners, you get to make your standards objective so that it's very clear to whoever the home builder is, whether it's a giant developer or a mom and pop contractor. Make those objective, make sure that they can check those boxes and say, okay, this meets code. I should be able to build this. Clear objectives and not overly complicated objectives either, right? So I just met with a really small builder yesterday, and they were like, this is so complicated. Like, I've been building homes forever, and they were trying to build something in Boise, and they're like, I can't figure this out. It's too complicated. Like, we don't know what's going on. And so having things be as clear as possible and in layman's terms, right? In regular people terms, because if I'm a homeowner in Lewiston and I want to build an ADU, I'm going to start by just Googling it, right? And I'm going to go to the city's website and figure out, okay, like, what are setbacks? Can I even do this? What is the permitting process? So making things as clear as possible and as objective as possible is the goal, right? And then that's what I mean by removing barriers. When you've got a PUD, that's kind of a different beast because it's a much bigger project. There's a lot more money. There's a lot more professional staff in there. So kind of two different home types, development types. Good questions. Good thought.
Zach, do you have any questions, thoughts?
So the state legislature has been addressing this for the last 2 years, firsthand experience. So I guess what's your guys' end goal here? I mean, is it just straight education? Because we passed legislation on starter home subdivisions, single wide, manufactured housing, manufactured duplexes. That was all this year. In 25, we went after permitting and put shot clocks on plan reviews and permitting processes for developments because, these every day costs $1,000 and you get a month out and you're $300,000 behind on your project. So the state's already making this shift. So I guess my question really is, what's your guys' end game? I peeked at your website to see what was going on there and kind of educate myself a little bit, but what's your guys' end game? What's your focus? Where are you trying to head from here?
Lowering the cost of housing, right, for everyday working people. And that is a big goal. And so a conversation that I had, I'm sure with you in the State House and with a whole lot of other legislators was, this is not a one policy fix it, right? There is no silver bullet to the housing shortage. And so, yes, the legislature did a great job, fully supportive of all of the bills that were passed this year, right? There's still more work to do and we can make more changes. The other half of that, the legislature's done great. Individual cities are interpreting these things differently, right? So Gem State is a statewide organization. And so we're going to work from North Idaho over to Eastern Idaho and into the southwestern part and central everywhere. And so making sure that we're trying to educate elected officials on how they can change their comp plans or change their codes to make more of these home types legal, right? This is a multi-year effort. And so the end goal would be, folks can afford to live here again. And that's a big one. It's a big goal, but I'm a big dreamer. We'll make it happen. So.
I mean, I think ultimately what will, and Kyle he's one of our elected officials. He's one of our state reps for District 6, correct? 7. Sorry, I know they swapped. And so, I know that the state can set uniform standards, but there's a balance between how much do you mandate and then how much freedom do you allow localities and other entities to kind of make their own decisions. And that's where I would say every individual entity, whether it's a county, city, or something else, their needs and how their growth patterns, migration is going to be unique. And so what may work for one community may not work for others. And honestly, what may work for one neighborhood, to be honest, may not be a great fit for another neighborhood that's across the city or something like that. So it's not a one size fits all. I think we would
absolutely. Yeah, definitely agree on that. And
That's what my concern stems from, right? Is at what point is not just big government at state level, but big government at the local level out in front of its skis, right? I mean, like you mentioned private property rights. I'm a huge believer in private property rights. If it's my property, I should be able to do whatever I want on my property, as long as it's not a hindrance to somebody else's rights, right? So, but where do we draw a line is the balancing act that most people don't understand, that not just legislators, but P&Z commissioners, county commissioners, the mayor, city council, we all walk a fine line of where do we draw that line and how far are we willing to push it before we've just overstepped. And then at what point is that no longer acceptable and somebody has to do something to correct it. And so that's my concern is, a lot of the stuff we do at the state does have unintended consequences. And, there's
absolutely
a lot of things that happen, within cities across the state that I strongly disagree with based off of some of their planning and zoning or city regulations or ordinances or whatnot. But those communities are making those choices for their communities, right? So I just want it to be known that I do understand that there is a line, and legislatively, I don't want to overstep it.
Yeah, there's definitely a line, and most of the bigger impact legislation, so duplexes and ADUs, or not duplexes, ADUs and the starter home subdivisions bill only apply to cities with over 10,000, right? So they are for bigger cities. So smaller cities that don't necessarily have the staff to accommodate those changes, they're exempt from this, right? And you know, you all being in the room, I don't think any legislator wants to say, let's get rid of P and Z. Right? Y'all are very important. You serve a very important role. Yeah. So yeah, local government is incredibly important. And that's why, you know, at Gem State, like, yes, we policy at all levels of government except for the feds. I don't want to deal with the feds. But state level, yes, absolutely. City level, yes. Town level, right? We've got resort communities that have very unique needs, right? As far as being able to get their workforce housed, so that folks aren't driving for 2 hours just to get into a job that pays $10 an hour, right? So I think we can do both, right? We can recognize that each individual community is different, but that also there's best practices and they're being amended in real time, right? What we're learning across the country is that some of our policies are outdated, and this is across the country, and that we can update them in ways that allow for more homes, and that will eventually, you know, free market capitalism, it works. Like, it will lower the cost of housing. So.
Well, I'm just thinking, so when I back to the established neighborhood type thing, one of the situations, and again, not calling anyone out, we fought, I think, and let me clarify, we don't have a lot of power. We don't make final decisions.
Right.
You do with conditional use permits.
Okay, that,
Yes, with CUPs we
Yeah.
do.
okay, but now.
But not a rezone.
Yeah.
You know, so to back that back up, there was, we did have situations with the developer who really pounded the drum of affordable, and if you make me do this, it's not gonna be affordable. And I think most of us stuck to our guns. We worked really hard to give them a lot of options, you know, to meet whatever criteria, you know, we expanded that, et cetera. And at the end of day, it was advanced beyond our control and power, and he got his end results as needed. Now, that's not here nor there, it's no skin off my bones, but when you're gonna pound affordable, and I think about myself, if I were out single and I needed to pay rent, and I needed a place to rent, right? I always do it through that lens. And the very first unit that came up required $2,900 a month rent, $2,900 a month security deposit, and $2,900 last month's rent. So a $9,000
Yeah.
entry into what we want to pretend to call affordable. And that's not affordable, that's gouging. Now, whether that was his building cost or not, that's a whole different problem, and I'm not gonna get into that. But when I think about affordable, I also think about those small footprint communities. And we have a unique challenge, and I don't know that other universities or like municipalities do. We have a college, smack ass in the middle of our historic district. And what it has is state buying power. And excess money that we can't compete with, that individuals going into starter homes cannot compete with. And so they're snatching them up. And then they're meeting the criteria of, as long as we put kids in it, transient kids through school, there's no taxes on it. So that comes off the tax rolls. And then they start buying entire neighborhoods of single family homes that are, wait for it, affordable, using tax dollars to take those away from opportunities for single families to have a home or compete with it. So at any level of legislation, my question might be, like, is there any restrictions even being discussed about large state institutions literally removing the very focus that you are coming to us to talk about by limiting those resources using state dollars to do it? Because we have beautiful homes. We have beautiful, tiny, little affordable homes, but we don't have them
Yeah.
now. A state entity.
That's a question for your representative there at the table. I
Kyle!
can write something down.
Can we talk, my love?
That is
I work for
beyond
University of
my
Idaho, and I see it
beyond my
happen.
scope.
Well,
Not at this level, not in this
well,
community.
I will say, like, Holly and I mean, Holly, you know me from the MPA program at Boise State, like,
Yes.
and Boise State has definitely, and that's my alma mater. Like, Boise State has expanded, but they partially did it that way. Now, I know that they have had a 20-year growth plan, and I'm not saying they did anything, shady, but that is partially how they did it. Like, when I went to school at BSU, off Broadway, there were old small homes that lined that road. And I lived there in Boise until 2019. And by 2019, all those homes were gone. And somehow, some way, the university owned all that property. And I'm sure by
Weird.
now they're developed into other university properties. Yeah.
So I can speak on behalf of University of Idaho. I'm a almost 37-year employee there. And we bought a businessman as a president this time instead of an academic. And he came in, and we have a strip of property that was archaic and vintage and moldy. And over time, he worked out a deal, and we have some of the most amazing structures. They're all 4 floors, they all like 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom and some 1-bedrooms, and they're all, and they are building essentially a whole mini city on a strip of property that was vacant, other than taking down what they already had there. They aren't consuming individual family homes to expand. Now, because the college was here and was allowed here at the time that it was, that's one thing. But a community that has limited or restricted real estate to start with, to offer people to come affordable, new starter, downsizing to new families, whatever it is. There is nothing on the planet that allows an individual who has to go through financing to buy a home as the prices rise that can either fight with or compete with a state entity, or even for that matter, a financial entity that wants to maybe level it and make a parking lot there. So we're not just competing for people who want to move here and find a single family or a nice apartment, or God forbid, a $3,000 a month, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, adjacent to all other 3-bedroom, 2-baths. I think that here in this body, we want to see development that people want and want to seek. I'd love to see a tiny home village. Clarkston's got one that is just so charming, and Pullman has one that's so charming. But you have to find a developer that really gives a crap to build one.
Yeah.
And not just think about making bank.
Right, but I think the biggest barrier talking, I'm in the trades, right?
I know, I'm not picking on you.
Right, no, I don't build homes, I just wire them. But I deal with a lot of developers, a lot of big builders in this city that build massive, hundreds of homes a year. And the barrier is partially on planning and zoning, right? We have minimum lot size requirements that we're preventing them from building those communities. You're not gonna build a 800 square foot home on a 6,000 square foot lot. It doesn't make any sense. They can't make money that way.
Well, no, I got that.
And so that's why I supported the legislation this year that we did for these starter home subdivisions on a 4-acre lot. Infrastructure has to be available. You're not guaranteed to get it, but if the infrastructure is there and you meet all the requirements, the city can't tell you no anymore.
Yeah, no.
Well, that will allow these people to, because they're gonna turn those things out like this. They're gonna make more money than they're doing on single family homes.
Well, candidly, Kyle, we have a mayor who wants to sell part of the cemetery property, wants to make a commercial because it abuts Southway.
Right.
And I will fight that to the death. But if he said, we're gonna release it to a developer who wants to put in a charming 30-unit small
Starter home
village,
village, yeah.
I don't have a single problem with that. I'm just done with commercial, right? So
We
in
have a
my.
lot of vacant commercial space in this
Yeah,
town.
that is-
Oh, no, yeah, we are literally seeing people come here and asking us to allow residential within existing commercial buildings
Yeah.
because they can't rent those. And I don't want a parking lot right next to my insurance agent,
Sure.
right, apartment, but if somebody does, hallelujah, and we pass those things.
Well, I think that's kind of more to what Holly was talking about, private property rights, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of outside the scope of what
Well,
her
no,
presentation was.
It's about lot size and about intent. And I know we're off, but I want to tell Holly that this board isn't opposed to growth
Good.
and infill I mean, lot size, they're working on that. I think we just changed everything
Yeah, you
to
got
meet the state.
You came to state.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at some level, it is on the developer to actually put in the effort to actually,
Correct.
you can provide, and again, knowing that we operate in a free market, private property rights,
Yeah.
you can only go so far before you finally say, we've provided you the environment and the incentives, whether they're non-monetary or regulatory, for monetary or regulatory, to take the effort or to make the effort. And if you're not going to, then then you get into that crossing that philosophical line of
Right.
where does it become too much to the point where you're mandating instead of creating opportunities?
Yeah. So.
And I will add real quick that affordability mandates are being repealed all over the country because they do not work. Right. If you mandate as a state and come in and say, okay, you can develop this, but you've got to have, 20% of it has to be low income. Those projects just don't get built,
Do that, okay,
right?
okay.
So
because they
most-
don't pencil,
Has to be
right? They don't pencil out, right? And so the fewer restrictions, the fewer limitations that you can put on a project,
Mhm.
the more homes you're going to have, the more folks who are going to build homes, and that's what we need. We just need more homes. So yeah, affordability restrictions and mandates do not work because we've seen them fail across the country, and we've seen them be repealed across the country.
I didn't know those were on the.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
I mean, I don't think they are anywhere in Idaho.
Washington does
but
it.
Washington, yes, not Idaho.
Washington does it, and they've been trying to get rid of them too because they just don't work.
They never
And
happen.
right, they don't work.
Which explains
There's
why
certain things, if you want to provide like a tax credit or, a reduction in impact fees, like sometimes those will work, but it's really hard to track those things. Like really the simplest solution is probably the best. We need more homes. We need more of a supply, right? And that will at least stabilize the cost of housing. And affordable is subjective. So.
Well, and if we go back to opening up zones so we can do more development with less restrictions, and let's think about the C4, which is the whole purpose of what was taking place. The biggest, I think, concern that I as a citizen would have is when we do change the zones and then you get that bridge or that buffer, the varying types of housing. At some point, if you look historically at how communities develop, those properties then suddenly are like, well, they're a budding commercial, so let's make them commercial. And then we start losing homes, actual single-family homes in those areas, because now we've changed a zone to the point where it just makes more sense to make this swath now. And so that my bigger concern as a planning and zoning person who is trying to thoughtfully grow or help grow or guide is how do you find the balance to add a buffer without letting what's already there leach into now what we've already done, and now that changes it to now that's going to be commercial, and the swath keeps growing of commercial and we're losing residential homes to it based on zoning changes.
That's where you need those large master plan communities that aren't really feasible in Lewiston.
Yeah,
like the planned subdivisions of Boise.
well, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not opposed to buffer. It's just how it eventually changes and perverts what was and what used to be.
And those are generally considered the thing that makes those hurt more, or those situations hurt more when it happens, is those are the affordable
There you go.
homes. Those are the actual verifiable affordable homes for this community,
Like the
based on our
bench.
median income and wage.
The downtown bench behind Les Schwab, that, there's some gorgeous little homes down there, but it's become so compressed and so condensed that even affordable is a place that you don't necessarily want to buy if you can because of the condition.
Right.
And not of the home, but of the
That's-
environment.
A lot of that's neighborhood deterioration due to people that live within the neighborhood, right? So if a lot of those homes were single-family booming households back in the 20s and 30s when they were built, then they became rentals, right?
I know, well,
And
that-
So you see rentals come in and then you get
That's,
lower income families. I mean, Sunset
Yeah,
Park, same thing, right? The only thing
Yeah.
that saved Sunset Park, I lived there, my house was built in 1955.
yeah,
The only thing that saved that community is none of it's ever turned into rentals.
yeah.
It's always been single-family homes.
But we're seeing it in Normal Hill.
Yeah.
We are seeing them getting snatched up, affordable homes, the affordable home market base that we have available, getting snatched up either for LCS's use or for people who want second income property homes.
That's what they've become.
And then they become like two flanking me, two
Yeah.
are income property and they're both $2,000 or $2,100 a month.
But the rate is due to lack of availability, right? We have no market.
Yes.
You have nothing to choose from, so rents are whatever they wanna charge for
Right.
rent.
I know,
They're gonna
I
get it.
know, no, I
Right.
get you,
Yeah,
I get you. I just wish they'd quit buying them as income properties and let people have a shot at them.
We can't,
can't
as a
do that.
government.
Yeah.
No, I know, I'm not saying we can, that's
Idaho
personal wish.
prohibits rent control
Yeah.
as well, too.
Yeah.
so we
Well, you
do
can't, and
that.
again, that's the private property rights. You
Yeah, no,
can't stop, yeah.
I-
And I'm
I-
not saying you're advocating for that.
I know I'm not, no.
No, I
It's not
know.
a zoning,
It's not a
Yeah, no, but when we, my point being is when we have affordable housing, it's not necessarily being offered to those in need.
Right,
It's being
It's,
offered for profit for whoever
Thank you.
needs the
right.
income.
So then then by definition,
Comes back to
Again, that's
society
not a zoning
issues.
issue.
oh, I know, but it is something, it's not a zoning issue that we can impact, because if a community has been around for 100 years, it's developed over the course of its own development, like the individual
That's just
situations
the
have been
way
made.
Markets moved.
But it does indirectly impact the environment in which we operate as commissioners, even if we
For
can't
planning
directly.
purposes.
yeah, for planning. And so that's when you're looking at infill, when you're looking at loosening restrictions so that we can develop these properties, should we happen to have the money to buy one and re-envision it.
Right.
I 100% understand that and understand if I have the money to buy the property, I should be able to do what I want with it. As long as it like meets and matches, we don't want the sky rise, right? You don't, single family home, hello, I mean, and so I don't think it's unwelcome to understand there's gotta be some balance between preserving the things that make those charming and at the same time allow growth.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's room for it. Yeah, 100%.
And that gets back to that fine line thing, but I'm glad you brought up, impact fees, because that's something I hear a lot about.
Bet. I'll bet.
Yes, you do.
So what is
And
an
they've gone up
impact fee?
substantially.
Well, I mean, Holly, do you want to answer what an impact fee is? I know we've been doing a lot of
Uh,
thinking among ourselves.
No, I don't. But I have an anecdote because I probably won't be able to give you the best answer. I'm not a planner, and I'm not a home builder, right? I'm an educator and a lobbyist. But let me just give you an anecdote about impact fees, right? So the city of Star is it's a super fast growing city. It's been pretty small. They have impact fees there that have paid for a brand new, beautiful fire station, right? So the city of Star has this beautiful fire station. It is not staffed because impact fees cannot pay for staff because it does not pay ongoing maintenance. You can't use impact fees in that way, right? That's not what they're to be used for. So it's not like the city can just collect that and use it. Impact fees have to be used for the impact that new development is having on infrastructure and on cities. So again, like Star, beautiful fire station, gorgeous, and it's empty. There's no staff in it.
Now you can buy fire trucks with it.
Yes, they did change it. You can buy fire trucks now with impact fees. So you just can't pay anyone to drive them. So
So
Or to
then you have
maintain
to,
it.
if you're Star, then you have to try and pass a levy, which fails.
Right, but one of
Correct.
the things is impact fees across the state have grown 30 to 40% in the last 8 years. It's been wild.
And they're collected how? How are they?
On development, so.
Oh.
On new
developer
development.
goes in, city comes and says, okay, this development's gonna have this much impact
Yeah.
on water, sewer,
Oh.
roads.
So is
Yeah.
there a,
And then
Is there a cap on impact fees?
And then the developer pays that? Or,
Yeah, it
Well,
goes
that
to-
gets
goes
passed on to
straight
the homeowner
builder, and then it
eventually.
gets
well, of course it does.
Passed
Yeah.
on to the
Yeah.
buyer,
Yeah.
right? So
But that's
Houston
a
may not have impact fees, but it's similar.
Right.
And the cost,
right.
Other costs.
the cost that go into
Traffic
building a home in.
mitigation,
Voluntary.
yeah, infrastructure bonds.
Right.
And so
that
this is
alone has gone from $8,000
Yeah, Holly,
6
good
years
luck.
ago to
Good
$13,000.
luck. She's trying to rein us in.
yeah, my earbuds are dying here. You know, with impact fees, that's a much larger question about how we fund city government and how we fund new development and how growth pays for growth. And that is a very difficult question, right? And that is sort of beyond my area of expertise and sort of outside of the scope of what we're doing at Gem State too. Like we want more homes, we're trying to increase supply. We know that if we cut red tape, we can do that, right? We can build more homes if we cut red tape. So all of these questions are super related. You know, what's affordable? How do we make something affordable? How do we regulate this without regulating it, right? How do we make sure that people are being housed? This is a really complex question, and people want a simple answer, and it's just not. It's not one of those things. Yeah, policy questions rarely are. So.
I mean, the shorthand answer.
Terrible.
Well, yeah, I mean, the shorthand answer is it depends. The problem is, as with, I think, just about anything in life, it depends. There's 1,000 variables that impact the depends part. And that's true for Lewiston and every other community in the state.
The underlying message is if the planning and zoning and the city council sets a standard of what it would consider as being in conformance with its goals, then as those applications come through, regardless of neighbor or other input, then the city should be approving those. So it needs to be considerate when establishing those regulations and thoughtful on the impacts of when it sets the standards and criteria for these applications. You know, are you creating an application that you must pass? Or are you being set in something that's overly discretionary and finding that balance between what you should pass versus what should be more discretionary?
Well, Jennifer, we don't draft up our criteria. That's something that comes from the state, isn't it? Or
No.
That's us.
There's basic guidelines,
Okay.
and the city of Lewiston hasn't really done anything more than the basic guidelines.
Okay.
But some cities are saying that if you submit like a CUP for this thing, if it meets these criteria, and they're more specific than, does it meet the, you know, intent of the comp plan? You know, does it do this or does it do that? Then we will approve it, because they're trying to be more intentional with guiding the commission and council decision-making and having it be less discretionary.
Okay.
Which, again, fine line, right?
Mm-hmm.
At some situations you need all the discretion you can get, but you also have to be equal and fair across the board to everybody that comes before you. But there's gonna be unique circumstances that come forward where you're like, can't really approve that.
Well, I mean,
Holly, your presentation was wonderful. Thank you. I apologize, I have to run. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, I agree.
But I do like being intentional on everything, because you draw a line in the sand and say, this is the requirements, you meet the requirements, you move forward, cut the red tape, let the project go
And
forward.
we've had discretion in the CUPs that we have considered, and we've mostly approved CUPs, but there have been CUPs and PUDs that we have denied. And there's always been, I think we have, Jen can probably attest to this, there have been times where we've asked, like, where is the line here? And it is somewhat of a balancing test.
I mean, CUPs absolutely add to the final cost. So do keep that in mind and think about what you as a community want to approve administratively, what you want to allow to be approved administratively, right? So maybe that's, yeah, we think that duplexes make sense in this zone. So if a home builder meets all the criteria, cool, that's an administrative approval, which means that staff can go through and say, yep, this checks all the boxes, check, 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 here's your permit, and it's gone, right? And that cuts down months of time, which cuts down on the final cost, right? Because that's the end goal, right? We want to just lower the cost, and one of the ways to do that is to not require a CUP. Because if you're requiring a CUP, you're automatically adding to that final price tag. So think through like what makes sense for your zones in your community that could be an administrative approval that doesn't require the home builder to come before your commission and say, hey, can I pretty please do this? If it meets all the criteria, then go for it. Build the thing. More homes, lower costs, more supply. So
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Perfect.
thank you all. Thank you all for volunteering. I know this is yes, it's so important. Again, and I don't think the legislature is going to get rid of planning and zoning. It's not going to happen. I'm not advocating
I'm not super
for that.
worried about that.
I got other things to do.
Challenge accepted.
Well, yeah, thank you all for listening to me. If you've, I think Dawn has my contact information. So if anybody has specific questions, wants follow up, I know that the presentation I gave tonight was drastically different than what my colleague gave to City Council on Monday. So, Dawn, I don't think you have the most up-to-date slides, but I can send those over if you want to pass them on. They were probably different than what you have in your packet.
Well, I mean, if we want to inflict pain on ourselves, we can't just watch the,
Just
we can't just
I'm
rewatch the
sure-
city council
I'm
meeting. Not
sure
pain on
you
your
want.
guys' end.
I actually
I'm
attended
sure you
that
want
one,
more.
so I attended
Okay.
this presentation twice.
Oh,
Thank you all.
bless you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
So, in application, I'm thinking about one CUP where this guy had I believe a duplex and wanted to.
Yes.
Add that single family home.
And that made tons of sense.
Right.
So having to come in front of us.
Didn't make any sense for it to have to be here.
I mean, I think,
Yeah, and
yeah.
But he was asking for a,
Variance?
A fair,
well, it
well,
wasn't a variance. He didn't meet the full requirement, so he was asking
I don't
for
remember what
conditional
those
use
were.
because his lot was like 945 feet.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there was
Oh,
something,
That was
yeah.
in addition, it was because it's adding a second single-family home
Independent
to
structure.
one property.
Yes, yes.
And so he was short on
Okay,
one
that's
piece
right.
of the requirement.
Yeah.
And it was in addition, it was the lot size. But for the most part, that goes towards why I steer you away from some of those more emotion-based, the neighbors don't want it because of this, or, if people say that their home values are gonna go down, we remind you that no information was actually presented to you to demonstrate that.
Yeah, not in the county.
Whereas the opposite is different when you're talking about a couple weeks ago with that project. That was a whole,
That's still a pending project.
it is, right?
Serious?
So we're not being
Yeah,
specific.
because it's a rezone, so it has to go to the city council for final
Yeah.
approval. So they'll consider your recommendation.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
But
sorry.
that's, again, where you have to walk that. That's where
Yeah,
that
right.
discretion comes in.
And again, and even Holly said, like, there are individual factors you can consider for neighborhoods or a
Right.
PUD. Does it fit the neighborhood?
Correct.
I think the hard thing for anybody on any P and Z, whether it's us or any other volunteers on P and Z, is that you are gonna get in those situations where you are going to have those constituents come out and they're gonna have a say. And you're gonna have situations where there isn't a fixed term for affordable. So developers and everybody else are gonna have their own definition of what they're thinking of. And
You
so
mean
I
like
just think that makes
stomping
it
around and
difficult.
saying, why does everybody keep throwing around the word affordable? Why do we want affordable? Do you remember that speech? So I do have, yeah. I don't think that I don't come in here with the idea that I'm gonna say no to things. I've never approached that. As a volunteer, when she mentioned, like, we only get the negatives, right? Well, and then she says, I'm thinking about even political voting. Our turnout is a stretch, right? And our turnout on the comprehensive plan was begging for feedback. So in my opinion, when people don't give a crap one way or the other, they just don't show up. It's passionate, but then again, Gabe, why are you here? Like,
Why am I?
Kyle, why are you here? Why am I here? Because it matters,
Right.
right? So you just get, you can only pull the people when something matters.
Well, if you turn off social media, it's a whole different game, right? Like if you get away from that whole social media thing and actually talk to people in the community, you get a
Yeah.
whole feel than what you do on social media.
Yeah, oh, I don't,
I
yeah.
personally don't think Lewiston's been doing a terrible job with development. I think you guys have always done a pretty good job. I've never heard like super concerning complaints. Usually it's some guy's pissed because he got put a roundabout in or something, and I'm like, well, you know, nobody's forcing you to build it there, so. But realistically, I don't, even legislatively, when we're discussing these issues, I don't say, oh my goodness, Lewiston's horrible. It's places like Boise, there's, McCall has a huge issue.
Oh, I know, they got a problem.
Right, and they're trying to regulate the crap out of it.
Yeah.
To a point where it's just crazy, and so don't feel like you guys have a black eye. I mean, I live here too. We've been doing good. We're very less regulatory than a lot of other
Yeah,
cities.
well, and Lewiston too, we're constantly, you know, even by the work that the planning and zoning is doing, looking at our code and finding ways to be better. You know, the thing with the starter home subdivision, we have a small lot, section of our code for
Yeah.
lots as small as 4,000 square feet. So then this subdivision stuff, you know, kind of abuts it, but,
Right.
you know, and unfortunately with Lewiston, 4 acres in the city, unless you're annexing in,
Good luck
or,
finding that.
or buying the multiple houses
Right.
in established areas
Yeah.
and demolishing.
Exactly, which
And
is,
that's the
that's
problem,
scary.
right? So realistically, like Normal Hill, Sunset Park, it's gonna be 50, 60, 80 years before any of those finally become cheap enough for somebody to buy them and demo them and build an apartment complex.
Yeah, no, it's,
Now, down in, you know, Les Schwab area, down there on Idaho, that's a different story. Those houses are selling for extremely cheap. A lot of people are, like one gal moved in, her grandpa bought her a house while she was going to college. Her mom remodeled the house, she had 3 roommates move in, paid for her mortgage while she went to school, she graduated, sold the house, moved on.
yeah,
And so there's a lot of that happening down there,
Yeah.
a lot of rental stuff where people are actually refurbishing the community and you're
Yeah.
starting to see it come back.
fingers crossed.
But, commercial is a whole different ballgame in this town.
Well, that's the problem. There's gotta be a balance. You can't just focus on this without saying, well, if we let this creep in, then that's gonna change what's already there. And so again, it's a tight wire.
And I think we as a commission have explored it when we have made a decision on a CUP that we look back on when we're considering another CUP and we've discussed precedent. It doesn't necessarily set a precedent that you have to follow because every individual situation is unique.
And that's
the
why,
decisions that you make.
that's why you've got the
Right.
hearing.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, I would say in the context of, I'm trying to think where I was going with that. In the context of in the context of considering everything and making good decisions, along with being less regulatory, I think we do a pretty good job, and I think we ask the questions around like, do prior decisions actually govern the decisions that we make and whatever we're
Right.
discussing at the time?
Cause the
Things like
CUP, remind me, it doesn't terminate when the property changes hands? Okay, so maybe Kyle can answer this. Do you know the cost of having to come before this, filing a
For
CUP?
CUP?
Yeah,
Isn't it like 402 or something?
Yeah, it's a few $100s and then
It's the time.
It's the
explain the
time.
time as money thing to me, like
So
you bought a
every-
property,
Every day on a job site costs money.
but you haven't broken ground yet, let's say you just bought it.
Well, okay, so I can give you a better
Okay,
example.
okay.
So, you know, say you have something that you're trying to do, but you require city approval first.
Yeah.
So one of the common things that we have, it's more in subdivisions, but planning and zoning plays a role with rezones and some of the, and plat approvals. But you have your preliminary plat, so you have your land.
Yeah.
You have to rezone it. Lewiston rezoning must precede subdividing.
Yeah.
So if you're not already zoned for what you're trying to do, you have to do the rezone.
Okay.
The rezone, you have to submit an application, you have to have pre-application meetings with the city through the development review committee.
Okay.
And then, say you get to it, you submit your application and it gets scheduled for a hearing.
Yeah.
You're responsible for all the fees for noticing it, plus the fee associated with the application itself. I don't know what that fee is. And then the city will notice it. We have to notice it at least once, 2 weeks before the meeting.
Right.
And then you have your meeting with planning and zoning, in which your public hearing is had. And then they make a recommendation to approve it. 2 weeks later, the planning and zoning hears it again.
Yes.
Because now they're approving the reason statement
Yeah.
related to it.
Yeah.
And then, once that's done, then you schedule it for city council. And then we have to re-notice it for another public hearing.
Oh, another hearing there. Okay.
And so you have that, and then you have to make sure that that's published at least 2 weeks before the public hearing. And then the same thing, at that one though, you have your public hearing, and then typically you have your first reading of your ordinance.
Oh, Lord.
And then 2 weeks later, you have another reading, and for the second and third readings of the ordinance. But that doesn't actually go in effect until after it's published in the newspaper, which is usually a week
So it's like a
later.
it's like a 3 or 4 month process just for a
And the whole
CUP
time you're
to
holding
be
the cost
approved.
of
Well,
the
that's
land,
just
you
the
can't do
You're
that.
rezoning.
holding the cost.
So then you have your rezone, so now you're subdividing,
Yeah.
so you have your preliminary plot that you wanna do, but you're going through all the process and you wanna finalize it, but you still have to put in your public improvements, so your roads and sidewalk.
Oh.
But maybe you don't have the money to fund that until after you start selling the lots.
Oh.
So you have to do a financial guarantee prior to, so you have to do payment and performance bonds and all that stuff. All this time, you still haven't even built or sold a
Is
lot.
that common to most communities?
Some communities combine the subdivision and rezoning process, so if you can submit an application to rezone and subdivide at the same time.
Uh-huh.
It makes the reason statement process a little bit more complicated because both of them typically require some kind of reason statement as well. And so when you combine those, it makes it more complicated because then is it the rezone or the subdivision that
So in the other backhanded section of this too is if I went out to contractors to bid this job and now it's 6 months after,
They've already got other jobs too.
well, one, they've got other jobs, so now you're hung up even longer, and two, most of them are gonna wanna rebid because the way the market is going
Yeah,
Or
materials-wise.
you bid it
unstable.
and they accepted it and there's delays
Right.
and now they're locked out of taking other contracts because they have yours and now they're losing out on money and the likelihood of them wanting to do business
Okay.
again without rebidding it is very low.
Okay.
It turns into a huge mess.
Right. So the balance there is how do you streamline the process while ensuring that there's still safeguards, there's still regulatory safeguards in place?
You just zone everything R3.
I mean, that's one way.
I mean, it's what you guys are doing to me, so.
We're trying to do that, we're trying to upzone
Right,
it.
and then that way everybody, you can just come in, here's your application, you meet the requirements, rubber stamp, send them out the door.
But I mean, how long would you say that process takes? Like a rezone to a preliminary plat to it being approved, like how long?
I think it depends a lot on the developer and how familiar they are with the process, because some people are just, they think it's super they think it's super easy, and then they realize like, oh, you have to have a surveyor to actually do this. I can't just draw an imaginary line.
Yeah.
And then you gotta, then you got the surveyor's schedule, and then, or something has to be engineered, and you gotta hire an engineer, and so they don't realize about ADA standards,
So the bigger, I mean, obviously, the more complex the process, the bigger advantage
The bigger
bigger
the
developers have,
Bigger
or
developers,
more
right.
experienced developers, which I get. But if we're talking about smaller developers, it is true that then they're the ones that are kind of shortchanged because they may not have
resources.
developed in this community, they might have only done 1 or 2 projects, they don't necessarily have a survey
The
on
cost can be higher
hand.
because they're doing low volume.
Their
Yeah,
their materials are higher.
Yeah, so I was thinking, we have a lot behind us that burnt 4 or 5 years ago, and of course the house just sits and rots in on itself, and all the tarp threads come into my yard. I don't know why you tarp a condemned house, it makes no sense.
City probably required it.
They should come collect it. But anyway, and looking at it,
It's a
it's,
basement, it's for safety reasons.
So they're trying to prevent people from going in it.
no, fair. But it's been 4 years, and so the bottom line is that I look at that. Huh?
Private property, right?
No, I'm not bitching about that. What I'm saying is I'm looking at the lot size. And the lot size, I was thinking to myself, well, what could they do with that? It's a weird pie shape, but it's a half acre. And so I started looking up code and thought, well, would somebody come in and justifiably, I mean, depending on how they put the parking, could they put a triplex on there? And I don't know in the Normal Health South whether it'd be doable, but I thought, but logistically, but I don't know if they'd come in, I don't know if they'd come in for a duplex. And there was a lot of talk tonight about duplexes and if the lot and the code restrictions meet. Do we have any zones, even R2, that doesn't allow a duplex if the footprint's big enough?
I don't know, most of our zones allow two-family homes.
That's what I'm thinking.
But other places don't, so her thing
Oh.
is more
Across the state.
state.
Yeah, but I will say that when talking to developers, larger, that duplexes aren't making bank for them. They don't want to build those.
Right.
It's the low number.
Yeah.
It's the
Right.
number.
So, I mean, there's a couple guys that have built a few up there off the 16th. Russian family came in from Walla Walla. And then, they rent some of them out and they sell the other ones. So, I mean, there's there. I think a lot of it is everybody just wants to make a buck, right?
Yeah, well,
And
that's
so
the
everybody
problem.
wants to be affordable, and they could be building, even with current lot size requirements and current building prices, and
Yeah.
they could be building $350,000 homes, but they're not. They're building
I know.
$600,000.
That's the problem. That's the problem, because I think that, before I bought the house where we live, I would have never thought I was gonna pay $200 for any house.
Right.
And that was in 2017.
Right.
Apparently it's doubled and a little bit more, just ask the
My
county.
taxes is
But
coming
yeah,
up, so-
but what I'm saying is if I had to go buy my house now,
Right.
I couldn't.
No.
Right. No, I know. I know.
So to me, affordable, and if they're saying I own a $435,000 house,
Right.
Cindy would start looking for significantly
Right, I mean,
less house.
I wouldn't consider the home that we live in now, just based off our property value on Zillow, like, I would not consider that affordable.
Yeah, it
But
wouldn't,
we
it
can
wouldn't,
buy
be-
it
no,
at
I
that
catch myself
price.
sometimes looking at a house that says maybe 280 or 320, and I'm like, oh, and then I think, oh my God, the level of change in less than 8 years,
Right.
where even anything at 200 made my breath suck in a little bit, and now I'm like,
And now we just subconsciously kind of accept it,
Oh,
like the
325
goalpost
great.
moving
No, I
it
mean,
up
I
like
still- I
30,
listen-
40%.
I listen to, like, oh, my Tundra only cost $78,000, and I
Yeah,
just think, are
yeah.
you kidding me?
I
Right.
think something that Holly misses and a lot of people don't understand is this isn't the first time our housing markets have done this.
Yeah.
It's a cycle like everything else that happens to us on this planet. And it will correct itself at some point. We're just in a weird situation now where growth is extremely high in this state. And so while there is limited supply, demand will be high.
There's a lot of gouging.
So people are gonna charge what they can, and again, private property rights, who are you to tell me what I can and can't
No,
sell?
I'm not telling you.
And I
Right,
think, and I think the market has, somewhat
It's cooled
corrected in
a
the
lot.
sense that, property values are not going up 20 or 30% a year.
No. Houses that would have probably really tapped the 4 are down more than the 380 to 370.
Right.
So I'm watching them, and I have literally deep dived off the short bus of retroactive education in the last 3 weeks about property values, property taxes, how they're calculated, software platforms like ProVal.
You go talk to Dan Anderson, he'll tell you exactly how they're evaluated from Walmart in Spokane. Whatever, different
But
conversation.
yeah, you and I, we can go rounds. I'm still very, very edgy
I
about
got
it.
a bone to pick with these.
But yes, but it's not that suddenly Lewiston is a prime real estate, or suddenly we have a boon of
Right.
new businesses and babies being born left and right and all those things. You don't see a lot of that in the overall community. And I just think about back to the comprehensive plan. If we want, affordable living why are we not snatching up properties on Snake when they come up? Snake is one of our priorities to develop. Why are we still not doing anything with large lots? why, you know, like, there's so many things that, there are places. And what is the urban renewal agency doing other than helping put sewer downtown? Like, I don't understand how we can have a comprehensive
I want to talk
plan.
about the URE.
Right, I don't either, obviously.
You know, no, but if that's an agency that's supposed to work towards, like,
Right.
developing things, like, I asked the city council, why
I
has,
think we're outside the scope of
okay,
planning and zoning.
sorry, I'll shut up, but no,
We can end the recording and keep talking.
yeah. Can I make a motion? No.
We can, yeah, I mean,
Go
we,
home. Oh, Dawn has
All right,
something for me.
Moving on, here we go.
yeah, number 4, staff commission communications.
Sorry.
Everybody here will be here at the next meeting, correct?
The
Everybody said that last
22nd.
time.
Yes, the
Putting it on my phone right now.
There are 2 public hearings, a conditional use permit, and a rezone.
Oh, there are 2 public
And
hearings.
what's the date?
22nd
July 22nd.
at
So-
It's not on my
5:30
calendar.
p.m.
So you're telling me I should plan on being here till 9
So you're
o'clock?
saying there's a chance.
Not necessarily.
If we burn, if it meets code.
Yeah.
Right. All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I make a
would-
motion.
I will
Been
second
moved and
that.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting
Sorry,
adjourned.
ladies, you had to stay extra long.
I'll put it on the calendar.
Just send out a mass